Welcome on board Mai Tai. Kay and I have spent several years cruising the beautiful South Pacific Islands.
Here in Auckland, New Zealand, on our own boat Mai Tai. Over our years of cruising, people have asked us all sorts of questions. They want to know what it's like when you get out of sight of land. They want to know about storms and whether it's dangerous out there. They want to know about the sort of boat you need to go away on. Since we've been refitting the boat here in New Zealand, we've met a lot of interesting and experienced people, both cruisers and professionals alike. So we thought it'd be fun to film them, capture some of their information, and give you some sort of an insight into what this cruising lifestyle is all about. So firstly, let's take a look at what it is that keeps us going back for more.
After all, cruising can sometimes be hard work. We still have to watch out for traffic. And of course, there's still parking problems. And we can never get out of doing the laundry. And shopping at the local markets sure isn't like it is back home.
Cruising is about taking yourself and your home from one part of the world to another. It's waking up each day to face a new adventure and meeting new people. Many people spend their lives dreaming about it, and some, like Anna, can look back on their first offshore passage and marvel at the experience.
Everybody said, well, if you can do coastal sailing around New Zealand, you'll be fine offshore. But you know, if you're doing coastal sailing, really you just operate on the GPS a bit, and then you've got the depth sounder in, and really you sort of got direct points. You just look out. And it's completely different type of sailing when you go offshore. You know, we had no concept about what the sort of weather patterns would be like out there. We thought, oh, we're leaving on the tail of a low and there's a high following, so it'll go flat after a while. You know, it makes sense, but it's nothing like that at all. You know, the waves, basically the big waves keep going for the entire passage from New Zealand to Fiji, and it's really just completely different, just the way all the waves and the boat and everything sort of melds together. All the waves go under the boat, you know, and they never crash quite over the boat. You think they're going to do that, you think they're going to sort of crash right onto the boat, you know, but it just doesn't happen. Everything sort of rolls underneath, and you know, the boat sort of slides along the side of the waves, and it's just amazing. It's sort of like quite a magic feeling. It really is. So at the time I thought, oh, this is sort of like 50% adventure, you know, 50% sort of trial and tribulation. But you know, looking back on it, it's great. It really is. You feel alive. You know, you feel really sort of exhilarated. It's just unbelievable. I've only been sailing for 6 months or so, and it's just totally different world. I can't believe I'm doing this now. Like last year, my life was not like this. It's pinch myself.
There are all sorts of people out there cruising, young and not so young, rich and not so rich. Whoever they are and wherever they've come from, and wherever they're going to, this lifestyle began as a dream. But between the dream and the day you actually untie your lines and head offshore, there's an enormous amount of preparation and planning to be done, sometimes years. We went and visited Judy and David on their 38-foot yacht Sorcery, just as they were loading up to head offshore for the first time.
We had a little Cav 32 sitting out at Rakino. watching a sunset, thinking that we're both sick of work, we just need to do something. So that was where it came from. We thought, let's just sail up to the island. So that all seemed a good dream at that stage. And then we started talking to a couple of guys on a marina one day, and they introduced us to ICA. We went down to the meeting.
ICA is the Island Cruising
Association. Yeah. And we went and met Brian and Joan, and they sort of tell us the things we needed to get ready, and it's been a big project since then, really. Doing a lot of courses, a lot of up to Yacht Master, doing those courses, sextant courses, finding out what we need to do to the boat. So it's been a huge project. When you start, you want to know everything, and I've bought a lot of books, I've done a lot of reading. It's all theory, but we go out, we sail out in the harbour, or in Hauraki Gulf quite a lot, so we're practicing stuff when we're out there, so we won't know till we get out, but we've got the theories now.
You've got to know your boat.
You had to know your boat, and we know how this boat handles it. It does handle actually very similar to the Cav 32, it's just obviously bigger. So that was quite a good thing. So there's no bad nuances with the boat that it.
Okay, that's the boat part, but I mean a huge thing as well is leaving jobs, leaving family, leaving your house, selling or lending your cars. So tell us a little bit about that process.
That was probably the biggest thing for me, because I've never did the big OE, so finishing work took a bit to get over. Like, we were going to do it, but when it came to the crunch, it was quite a big decision to throw in your job, and that's what we had to do. You're going 6 or 8 months, you can't ask for leave, so, and we'll just do it when we come back. Sorry.
And Judy, what about you?
And renting a house. I mean, we didn't want to sell her, we wanted something to come back to, but it's peace of mind too.
But it's been a big thing.
It's
it has.
Huge.
It is a big thing.
I think the emotional part, it all becomes a big reality as the closer it gets. But then you've got to kind of let go and say, well, what isn't done isn't done.
For the 6 months, you're not going to be working on board. You're simply going to be relaxing and just to have your income from your house keeping you going.
The house, just to keep us ticking over, hopefully.
Well done.
Big step.
It is a big step, Judy. There's no question.
And we've
had the farewell party.
Yes, we have. We call it our Everest. So everyone has certain things they want to do in life, and I think this is our.
If we'll enjoy this, we're going again. Yeah, we'll go further next time.
The Island Cruising Association, run by a New Zealand couple, Brian and Joan Hepburn, has helped hundreds of cruisers with their preparations before heading offshore. They provide information through cruising guides and training seminars, and they even organise fun annual rallies from New Zealand up to Fiji and Tonga. They must have seen quite a few changes in the past 10 years.
The average size at 38 feet the first few years we went. Now we're one of the smallest ones in the fleet. 2 people can handle a bigger boat now because of the navigation and the steering systems and all things. Electric winches have made it easy for 2 people to sail a much bigger boat.
And your average size now, have you watched it?
Well in the mid-40s, yeah. Yeah, it's dramatically changed.
The ICA, come play and sail away to Canada, Blue Island with Brian and Joan. Bring all of your crew to have lots of fun too. Oh yeah, this is the best trip we've ever been on.
We met up with some of the cruisers as they were getting ready to head off on one of the ICA rallies to Fiji. Sue and Ron have cruised on their 55-foot steel yacht, Sea Kiwi, for several years. We asked how they got started.
I don't know, we thought it would be quite nice to do it, and we weren't yachty people, but initially we thought maybe a motorboat or something like that, and then we realised that probably a yacht was the better way to go, so we learned how to sail and built a boat and went and did it.
Did you have ideas of where you particularly wanted to go, or was it a lifestyle?
Mainly the Pacific, wasn't it? We think you could spend years and years and years in the Pacific. It's such a beautiful place, and it's unspoiled.
So when you first went offshore, were you really concerned about anything in particular?
My first concern was land, the sight of land once it was out. But I've got a great imagination, so my first trip I looked in the clouds and I could see land beyond. And seasickness was another concern. Was I going to be sick the whole time, and were they going to be concerned with, is she ill or whatever? And No, I wasn't. Stayed in the doghouse and then slowly worked out what medication I require. It suits me because there's so many different types and affects different people, different ways.
Lynn and John have cruised with their children since they were little. We were interested to hear what they had to say about cruising as a family.
Both Lynn and I have been involved in boats right since our childhood as well. Both sets of parents had boats, so we've grown up in boats.
How old were you when you first went cruising on Windflower?
I was 9, and Jenna was 6 when we originally left.
Yeah, I have my 7th birthday in Tonga.
But you go away obviously during school time, so you do correspondence schooling?
Well, we've been through all the system now with correspondence school. With the primary, intermediate and secondary. It definitely was easier with the primary, mainly because I'm primary school teacher trained, so it's very easy to follow. And with secondary, they have to be very independent and very organised, but then the system works in that the whole program is designed around them being able to learn for themselves. So it's the most frustration is getting work back and contact with the school more than anything else, but it has a lot of advantages, and as long as you set good ground rules it doesn't work too badly. They can't go and do anything else in the day until they've done their schoolwork and they know what that entitles, and that's always been a very good way of doing things.
Yeah, we set the watches, we do the work.
Cook the meals.
Yeah.
I'm the one that normally does that.
You run your business from the boat. Can you tell us a little bit how you set that up?
Yeah, run an architectural design practice back in New Zealand, and I've been trying to set my business up so I can run it from the boat for the last 10 years. But the increase in the power of computers, the design programs that are available now, and especially the communications that are available on the boat now, have made it very much easier to run the business. This is the first year that we've really managed to succeed in that, and we have an Iridium satellite phone on the boat, which gives us access to email, so we can email backwards and forwards with clients, we can email back to the office, and we can speak on the telephone to clients, so we're effectively in the office without being there, and this is the first year that it's really worked particularly well. So while the kids are doing their schoolwork, I'm further down the boat doing my office work. So I can think of a lot worse places to do design work and plans and than sitting in a nice bay with palm trees and warm water.
Do you find you start designing sort of more island-themed? Does it come into your designs?
I haven't noticed it so far. But,
you're not designing with thatched roofs or anything like that?
Not yet. No. I think my clients might have something to say about that.
It might give away that it's actually on the boat.
So the other thing, of course, is that as you become a little more universal with your office location, so your business can become a little bit more universal as well. There's now nothing stopping me from doing work for Fiji-based businesses. I've got appointments further up the chain to go and see resort managers and resort owners up there with a view to doing design work up in the islands as well. So it just expands your horizons.
Circumnavigation is definitely in the plan, and although we've met a lot of cruisers that have done it and said that they've found the best cruising in the Pacific, I mean, everyone's got to make their own decision, and what we want to see we can't do unless we have it in the boat. So
it's a big world out there, there's lots to see.
Would you like to sail to Fiji? Be the quintessence of the seaweed. By Valley High there for you and for me. Or would you rather get a job?
While here in New Zealand, we've talked to a lot of people about boats, the sea and the cruising lifestyle. Many of them are getting their own boats ready to go offshore themselves. The most important thing though is to have the right boat for the sort of cruising that you want to do. So we went to some well-known boat builders and designers here in Auckland to talk to them about the ideal offshore cruising boat.
Back in 1901, in his famous poem Sea Fever, John Masefield wrote, "I must down to the seas again, to the lonely sea in the sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by." But in today's world, we ask for much more than just a tall ship, and the options for a modern cruising boat seem endless. So let's take a look at what decisions need to be made when choosing the ideal offshore cruising boat. To begin our investigation, we looked up Kelly Archer. Kelly is a well-known New Zealand boat builder who has built several of the Deerfoot series for Steve and Linda Dashew, as well as several other custom cruising designs. Like many New Zealanders, Kelly and his wife Joss have cruised extensively on their own boat Mistral.
Offshore cruising boats are really about a tortoise in its shell, you might say. People take their homes and they travel from one part of the world to the other. So what we're really looking at is a seagoing home.
New Zealand yacht designer Richard McBride has plenty of offshore sailing experience, including 2 BOC single-handed races around the world. Unfortunately, on his second attempt, he was dismasted.
One of the advantages of having designed boats and talked to a lot of cruising people and done a lot of cruising is that there's one thing I've absolutely learned, the one definitive thing, is that everybody has a different answer. But in saying that, you look around this harbour here, and this is a bit of a Kiwi thing, I suppose. If this was Chesapeake Bay, there'd be half a dozen different boats and be heaps of copies. Here, you'll be lucky to find 2 identical boats, which tells you one thing, is that we're either a very eccentric bunch or everyone does have a different answer to this particular problem.
So what do the custom yacht designers recommend to their clients? Kevin Dibley is best known for his racing designs, but his portfolio also includes many performance cruising yachts.
Well, it's very owner-driven. If I have a client coming in, he's usually very well sailed, and he'll have very clear criteria as what he wants. In our criteria, personal criteria, I think strength has got to be number 1, sea kindness, in the respect of directional stability and whether it can handle the adverse conditions that you can get out there.
Well, how big should the ideal cruising yacht be? Over the last decade, new equipment has made larger boats more manageable for short-handed cruising.
The biggest issue on cruising yachts is payload. What happens is if people go for a year cruise, they start off at say 15, 20 tons, and sure enough when they come back a year later, they've got another 5 tons on board. Probably an exaggeration, but it just shows that, that the boats will get lower and lower as the cruise gets longer and longer, even to the point where they don't even know what's on board. It's just your little knickknacks get stored away and that sort of things.
So the less stuff you put on the boat, better. And if you've got an irreducible amount of equipment and gear, now you've got to accommodate it. So make the boat bigger. Well, not necessarily bigger, but longer. With the longer boat comes potential speed, better comfort, better motion. The negatives are the perception of the people who are handling it if it's not set up right, the cost of haul-outs, the cost of marinas, because all the costs in the way of servicing are related to length. People pay huge homage to speed. I think the benefit of a longer boat is that potentially it might do 12 knots, but if it does 8 or 9 knots most of the time, the comfort is enormous. I mean, you've just got to be sailing along and back off, reef the boat down, and it might go a knot slower, but the comfort level goes up enormously. And so does the economy when you're driving under power. So you want a boat that's potentially fast in real terms, but you're prepared to run it at 80 or 90%. The idea of a lightweight cruising boat is just not possible. A cruising boat is a home with a whole bunch of stores on board. So the lightweight idea comes from a racing boat which is stripped out. So immediately it's not lightweight, it's medium to heavy displacement. So a 60-foot steel boat can be designed nicely and be a very good cruising boat compared to a lightweight racer. I mean, it's ridiculous to me to build a carbon fibre foam core cruising boat and save 2 tonne in the hull on say a 70 or 80 footer and then put air conditioning, DVDs, heating, junk, toys and what have you, and have a boat that's displacing 60 tonnes. You've saved 2 tonnes in the hull, it's totally illogical.
Most cruising people will know that once they're out there in adverse conditions, they want that peace of mind that the boat can handle it. With heavier boats, they have that displacement to work through the system. With lighter boats, they're a bit like a cork in water, and they get thrown around a bit more. As long as the boat can handle it, I guess it comes down to whether the crew can handle it over long term, and that becomes another design issue.
What about the shape of the keel? We have found that most cruising boats will go aground sometime. Also, there are times that we want to do maintenance in the islands, perhaps to repair a propeller. If there are no haul-out facilities, you may have to go alongside a wharf. A long, solid keel to sit the boat on, preferably without a curved foot, gives us a good surface to stand the boat on, even if you are laying against pilings beside a wharf just to clean the bottom.
Most of our boats have been fin keels, mainly due to performance. The draft issue comes into effect. If you're really going cruising in the islands, you have to have a certain draft. You can't go over that draft. So we either look at a high aspect lift keel, where they can get the performance with the high aspect deep keel, but also lift it up and get into the anchorages that are required for less depth. For people that don't want the lift keel, they just want a set keel, you're sort of forced to go long because there's a certain area in the keel that you got to match with the sail area, and that's when you get your long keels. I guess the shorter draft, the longer the keel. There's better directional stability in longer keels. At the same time, with modern designing, with deeper keels, you can get a real performance edge to the design, and with new autopilots and that, it doesn't become an issue.
This long keel business it might be good in the sense that a boat stays on course more easily, but when the boat gets pushed off course by waves, then the self-steering gear has to work really hard in getting it back on course. And I had a wind-operated system and worked on a trim tab on the back of the rudder, and it did pretty well in heavy conditions because there was always a fair bit of force there, but it had to work hard all the time. And to me, it was when things got really tough, I had to steer, and it was hard work.
All the materials have advantages and disadvantages. A steel boat is the strongest and the easiest to paint. An aluminium boat is considerably lighter and it's almost as strong, but it's very difficult to keep a perfect paint job on it all the time. A fiberglass boat eliminates potential for electrolysis and paint problems. It's not as strong, it's more likely to be destroyed on a reef. It's likely to be more economical because there's numerous hull moulds all around the world, and so you can go and get a custom or semi-custom boat from a builder who can use his tooling. But when you're talking about a big cruising boat over 50 or 60 feet, the hull costs is a relatively small portion of the whole project. So if you can save 20 or 30% on the hull cost of, which might be 25% of the whole job, you're not really going to save a huge amount of money. The budget is affected more by the toys you want to put on board.
If I was going to go rock bashing like I have in the past, I'd build another steel boat.
Okay, well, if you're heading for the Antarctic.
Yeah, if I was heading for the Antarctic, yeah. Metal boats are hard to beat, and it's not essential nowadays to think about a steel boat being slow. If you're going to build something, you need to be looking at something over about 45 to 50 feet to get for steel to come into its own. But a well-engineered steel boat can be can be relatively light. Aluminium would probably be a first choice really, because it is so light. But for a lot of people, the cost and the complication of doing anything yourself on it's tricky because it's not everyone's ability.
Well, the last 10 years there's been a huge jump with with GRP, with fiberglass, with materials such as that. It would be hard pressed to design a boat that wasn't to GRP nowadays. Just the way that it's engineered, the fabrics that are coming out. Aluminium, steel, they're still popular, but more so in respect to the home builders. There are a few builders out there that are doing alloy. Alloy is really, it's a great material to design with. The problem with it now is the cost issues. If you can spend the extra money for an alloy boat, that's great. But boy, it's pretty hard pressed not to design a glass boat that, you know, is pretty good price-wise now, even compared to a wood boat.
Not everyone can afford to fulfill all of their wishes with a custom-built cruising boat. We asked our designers their opinion of the difference between a custom boat and a production boat.
First thing when you say production, what you're saying is compromise. You're trying to deal with the majority of the people out there. With custom boats, you're actually specializing the design to suit the individual. So if the individual's got very clear ideas of what he wants, you can customize the boat accordingly. The big thing with custom boats is quality. You end up with a better quality because the cost issue, which is a factor all the time, is second as opposed to what the client wants.
If you decide to look for a second-hand boat, refitting it to go offshore can become a very expensive exercise and may not be the bargain it first seemed. This could mean purchasing sails, rigging, and electronics.
Sometimes you find racing boats for sale after a race, and people think, oh, they'll buy one of those that's been around the world, I'll set that up and go cruising in it.
I would say I would be very wary, because one thing sailboat racing crews are renowned for is driving their boats unmercifully. It's never them that owns the boat, you know. And so you're able to get something with the keel bolts have been stretched, the rigging's all on its last legs, the mast may have little cracks, and who knows. I mean, you can get a boat surveyed, you can refit it, but then there's always the thing of maybe it is a boat that only works well at a given weight. And by the time you've fitted it out, you've just got another dog.
We spoke to two couples who've built their own cruising boat.
We went to two designers. We finished up getting a Dennis Ganley design, mainly because it was designed more for the build it yourself person. It was builder friendly. We wanted to do a steel boat, and he was a very prominent New Zealand designer of steel boats. We did all the steel work in a shed with a gantry crane, and we got the hull and deck all finished and primed, and then we moved it around to the back of our house when the farmer let us put it in the paddock behind us, and we did all the fit out in there.
We tried to buy one, but that wasn't working out, and a friend of mine said, build one, and I thought, no way. And he says, you can do it. And I thought, well, if he thinks I can do it, maybe I can. I was in the Peace Corps and from Minnesota, and I saw a sailboat that somebody built, and I thought it was the stupidest thing anybody could do with their life was to build a boat. And within 2 years I was building one in Alaska, where I went in a little island on Alaska, and I looked around for bare hulls since it seemed like a good start, and this just came out to be the best one.
Ingrid 38, is that correct?
Right, Atkins design, 1934.
Well, I have to admit that I didn't look at any of those things when I bought Mai Tai. I simply fell in love with her lines. Perhaps we shouldn't have let our hearts make the choice, but luckily, she has proven to be an ideal cruising boat for us. In any case, we're stuck with her hull, but let's take a look at her mast, sails, and rigging.
By the time Mai Tai arrived in New Zealand, her sails were looking pretty tired. In fact, some of them weren't even new when she left Seattle. We're going to replace all of our sails while we're here in New Zealand. So we had Brett Gray, loft manager of North Sails here in Auckland, come and talk to us about our sail inventory and discuss some of the different options available.
Well, the main thing to know about your sail inventory is to know your sail inventory. Know what you want, know what you want to get out of it, and basically you need to know how long it's going to last and the best way to use it. For your sort of standing cruiser, you'd be looking at probably a good durable mainsail, something that has 3 reefs in it for offshore work, so you're not limiting yourself too much was options there. A good sized roller furling headsail and a nice strong staysail.
Roller furling as opposed to hank-on sails?
I'm a fan of a roller furler headsail for any boat. Generally because they're so easy to handle. When you're sailing short-handed, one or two people, if things go wrong, you just need to pull a string and they roll away. Whereas if you hank on, you're dropping them down and trying to change, and you're always trying to fit the situation you're sailing in. Whereas if you're furling, you put a reef in and it tucks in easy. You don't need to get out of the cockpit. It's a little bit safer. Things like that. But again, it's put down to what you're used to, what your experience with is each of them.
We've seen some get stuck, opened out, that you can't roll in. That's a problem.
Yep, that is a problem. And in that situation, you just have to get it down. The problem comes in if it gets stuck halfway out or halfway in. And then you have real problems. But I don't hear of that very often. More often than not, it's a problem when they're out. And you just put them all the way down.
That always happens when you want to reduce sail because the wind's coming up.
Exactly, yeah. The worst possible moment, in the middle of the night.
Most of the 50,000 odd nautical miles that I've sailed, I haven't had any kind of furling or roller reefing head source, except for a couple of delivery trips along the coast of the States. But my experience is that every roller system I've seen is still too heavy for really good light air sailing. And of course, it's a compromise because the weight it adds up there is just more momentum for when the boat starts moving. But I think, realistically, you've got to look at a reasonably heavy rig on a cruising boat anyway, so that's always going to be a bit of a problem. A roller furling head sail is such a great idea that it's just really a matter of using it in the best efficiency.
Jim and Jeannie tell us about the reefing systems on their 60-foot yacht Onora, built here in New Zealand by Kelly Archer.
Yeah, roller furling on the head sails, but not on the main slab reefing, but single line slab reefing, which is a Kiwi perfection. When I first mentioned it to Chuck Payne, the designer, he said it won't work, but it certainly does. We've already been out and I'm very pleased with it. You can do all of your reefing from the cockpit.
And what about in-boom furling mains?
Furling mainsails are a bonus in the fact that they're nice and tidy inside the boom when they're rolled up. There's not too much bulk, they're easy to handle, but with everything mechanical, things go wrong. In boom furling mainsails have 6 full-length battens, and your reef, actually your battens are your reefing points, so you roll your batten underneath the boom when reefing, and it's a pretty simple, tidy system.
We got Brett to explain about some of the different materials available.
To give you an idea, Dacron is your base cloth that everybody knows. It's the old-fashioned polyester woven, and then your next step would be a radial polyester sail. Probably best more for headsails rather than mainsails. Mainsails develop a lot more compression loads through their battens and things like that, so stretch in an offload direction is more, so therefore you're better to go either stick with a Dacron or step up to a Spectra. Spectras are based on polyester, it's just a lower stretch polyester and very strong. A Spectra sail is top of the line cruising cloth, that holds its shape, it's lighter, but then again it costs more. A Dacron sail will always last you 20 years, as long as you know that your sailmaker sold you a good cloth, then it's going to last forever. Spectra mains tend to have a smaller lifespan, generally because of just the way they're made, rather than being a woven, stuck together like a mat. They're laminated up, and they do break down over time. You probably look at half the lifespan of a Dacron sail. Not being too extravagant is obviously one thing that the cruisers do well. They tend to look after their sails because they're the engine of the boat, and that's how they get from A to B. So it's one thing you really need to be careful with is to take that step and reef down early. It makes your sails last longer, it makes you feel better.
What about moulded sails?
Moulded sails, 3DL sails, well that's the next step in the whole line of cloth production. And it's something we are doing at Norse quite well. We've got a Marathon product that's a Vectran based cloth. and the sails come in one piece, and we stick them together like that.
Do they use them much for cruising?
They're starting to, yep, especially in the bigger super yachts now. They're lighter cloth, lighter sail is made from this cloth than what you would out of a panelled sail. They take the loads better through the continuous fibres, and it just seems to be working really nicely.
And durability and cost?
Cost is a little bit more. Durability is about the same actually these days. We've managed to get the lamination process down to a pretty fine art at the moment. We've refined our glues we're using and the heat we're using to bond the sails together. And it seems to be working out really nicely.
Are they mostly done in the States, are they?
Yep, the 3DL sails are moulded in our plant in Nevada, in Reno, and they're shipped down here and we finish them off or to whatever North Loft is around the world.
Not all cruising boats carry a spinnaker, but what does Brett have to say about light wind sails?
Well, you have your standard spinnaker that you run off your spinnaker pole. My preference probably would be a Jenica, a spectral spinnaker, because they're multi-purpose. You can tack them off on the bow, so they're simple to use, or you can use the pole to bring them back to get some better projection when sailing downwind.
Well, as we have heard, eventually every cruising sailor is going to get hit by rough weather one day or another. So let's take a look at storm sails.
Storm sails, the thing there is to not be shy with them. Just build the strongest sail you can find. If you're in trouble when someone's looking for you, they're going to see an orange sail much better than a white sail in 60 knots of breeze with big breakers. And there are category 1, I think it is, sizes that predetermines your size of your sail compared to the size of your rig. Your sailmaker will know all the categories that you need to fit into and how it has to be built. Basically, you want something that's bulletproof, that's going to go through that 60 knot storm. You want a reasonably good quality Dacron for this, around 10 ounce, 10.2 ounce. Basically this is a storm jib for a 55 footer. You can see we have behind the luff tape, because it's going up a luff foil, there's eyelets in case you rip your luff tape or your foil's damaged, so therefore you can lash around your forestay. These areas have to be quite strong. You've got a couple of layers of extra Dacron plus the flat tape that's under here. You can see that the webbing's pretty grunty, nice and long, and a good sized stainless steel ring. So you're hopefully never going to pull it out. Also your patches are double thickness to what they normally would be. There's basically a lot more meat in size in the sail.
What about repairing our sails?
A good sail repair kit will have webbing, plenty of hand sewing thread, sticky back, and maybe some cloth that your sail's made out of. That'll get you through. And you can repair your sails yourself. I mean, generally you rip some straight lines, so you can just stick your webbing there and just sew through your webbing is quite a good option normally.
So what about the new technology now that's come about with racing sails? Has that made a big difference to cruising sails?
Huge difference. Mainly, 3DL is probably going to be the biggest thing for a long time yet. The marathon product is really starting to step out, and we've had a boat recently here in Auckland that's done 25,000 miles with a mainsail that looks brand new, so it's exciting to see such a thing.
Come a long way from the old cotton sails, haven't we?
Definitely, not like the Egyptians anymore.
On Maitai we still use Hank-on sails, and with the cutter rig we can always keep her well balanced by having the right sail for the job. On a long passage you can go for days with the same sail combinations, so the convenience of roller furling is less important. We feel that roller furling headsails are often too heavy for light airs and too light for heavy weather sailing. When partially rolled in, the shape doesn't allow you to sail well to windward, so they end up being a bit of a compromise in many situations. I must admit though, for a day's sail, they would be pretty nice for their ease of handling. For our new mainsail, we needed to change the mainsail track on the mast. We even thought at one stage that we needed a new mast, as we'd seen some blistering in the paint which had concerned us, and we couldn't see the extent of the corrosion underneath. So we thought we'd better check the whole rig, including some of the standing rigging. We decided to talk to Tom Dodson, president of Southern Spars. Tom is a sailor with many America's Cup campaigns under his belt with Team New Zealand.
Firstly, we build a lot of cruising rigs here already. You know, there's probably a perception among some of your viewers that a carbon mast and a Southern Spar carbon mast is a racing product, but we do a lot of cruising, and there's some years when it would be, you know, around 50% of our business. Aluminium's only positive is at the moment it's cheaper than carbon fibre. Apart from that, in yacht masts it's the same as in any other sporting equipment where, you know, it could be a road bike or a tennis racket or a golf club. Carbon fibre is becoming the material of choice, even for people who sail or play at not such a competitive level, because it's going to make your sport more enjoyable. It's outlasting normal metals, aluminium one of them. It doesn't corrode, it's become virtually unbreakable. Any mast can break if there's a rigging failure, and as I say, it just deloads everything because it's light. The boat's under a lot less stress. You can save about 40% of the total weight of a mast package.
Because carbon's coming down in cost, it pays to go carbon a lot nowadays, because it drops the center of gravity, it drops the performance goes up, the pitching becomes less. You can sculpture it a bit better, so it looks better than aluminium.
When you're cruising, a lot of times you're in a big seaway. You could be motoring into it or short sailed, and if your mast is soft, it'll, what we call pant in the sea, where it's just constantly going through a bend fore and aft, and that'll wear out your fittings and your rigging. So we always recommend stiff.
And that would apply to both materials, carbon and aluminium, the same?
Yes, but obviously with aluminium, when you go stiff, you go heavy. They're joined this lengthways, and that's how we can put all these tubing and everything inside them, and we get some extra stiffness as well from joining two shells. Lengthwise, they have to get very long before we'd have to join two pieces, yeah.
What about repairing? I mean, if something breaks or whatever, can they be joined? Or?
Very easily, yeah. A lot of America's Cup rigs that are out there sailing around now have been broken and joined.
That's what I was thinking.
And they add
like
very...
a weld, is it, or?
It's better than a weld, because you can actually scarf the repair back into the rest of the spar, so you don't get a hard point or a soft point, and because you add very little weight to it, whereas with an aluminium rig you'd have to literally weld a plate or something over the top of it. With this, you're actually just replacing the old material with new material.
We're seeing more and more swept spreaders on modern rigs.
The swept spreaders are a good feature for cruising boats. They take away that element of the backstay or running backstay being the last safety mechanism for the rig, so it just adds another stiffness to the mast. It means you don't necessarily have to have your runners on or even your backstay, and it locks the mast in sort of 3 points instead of 2.
Standing rigging is what holds the mast up. So what are our options here?
Carbon is the lightest again, and it's quite significant. The testing we've done so far shows that it's virtually indestructible as well, but it's still early in its evolution. I'd say that it will be material for the future. We've got on a lot of performance boats now, but I would say stiffness is probably more important at the moment. Carbon is the stiffest and the lightest, but it's the most expensive. So I think most of your viewers will be looking at a rod, stainless steel rod, or a nitronic rod stay, which will give them the combination of stiffness, relatively inexpensive, long lasting, but not as long lasting as wire.
3 POB, mast in the water.
If your standing rigging fails, this is what could happen.
They all seem well, still right above it. Just forward a little bit, going to do another circumdazer.
You know, there's nothing emptier in the whole world than a sky over a boat that's just lost its mast, and for one thing, you can hardly stand up on deck because usually the motion's so bad. You know, being dismasted twice is not smart. One time was on the delivery voyage, and the there was a crack in one of the rod riggings that was probably there before any of us stepped onto the boat. Unfortunately, we could deal with that one, even though it was rod rigging. We had old blocks that we could take the side straps off and use the metal straps as spacers. We had tools, hacksaws and things. There was enough conventional wire rope on the boat, and we were able to cut bits of the mast up and reuse it. So but the main thing was, I think, was having a plan, knowing how to get the mast back on board, things like parbuckling and things, which are sort of words out of books. But everyone can learn to do it, It's just a matter of utilising the tools on the boat, modern boats with winches and things. If you've just got a plan in your head about what you might do, then that gives everyone else confidence as well. When you say, well, right, we've got to get this thing on board, we've got to stop it damaging the boat for a start, and but of course all rigging disasters don't necessarily end up as masts lost. I broke a forestay going around Cape Horn, and which ultimately was the main cause of me running aground in the Falklands, but that's another story. I was able to secure the mast until I got into calmer water, and having got there, went up and found that both forestays had twin head stays on an equaliser, and they were both cracked, or the other one was cracked as well. And so I was able, by using bulldog grips and the pieces of anchor chain that I cut off, to shorten the stays and sail on. It required a lot of concerted effort, but again, just having a plan and having some resources enabled me to do that.
Wow, can you imagine being dismasted twice at sea? We decided to remove our mast so that we could inspect the whole thing, including all the old wire rigging and the chain plates. We stripped the mast completely of all its fittings. We found that the bubbles were a result of corrosion caused by moisture getting behind the paint layer. So we were advised to remove all the paint and then leave it unpainted. Well, luckily the corrosion hadn't weakened the mast in any way, but we ended up sawing off the bottom, then rebuilt the step to maintain its original height to fit the standing rigging. Then we had to replace all the fittings, rewire all the lights. Then with the use of a hand winch, the two of us re-stepped the mast. We really weren't looking forward to this huge job, but it sure feels great to have it all done and be back out sailing again. Well, we've discussed the hull, the rig and the sails of our vessel, and now we'll be looking at creating a safe cruising environment to live in and at some of the systems we need for our seagoing home.